Hello and welcome to the Cynic Weekly on Thursday, the 28th of August 2025. I'm your host, Barry Gallagher. And oh boy, the weeks just keep getting better and better. And to bring in the good the good form, the good feeling that surrounds our football club right now, I have, as always, Stuart Duggan with me.
Well, that's a lot of pressure, Barry. That's a lot of heavy lifting to do to try and create some good feeling around Celtic just now. But I'm not looking forward to talking about it, but I am obliged to talk about it. So that's good enough for now.
Yes, indeed. Scott, thank you for joining us as well. And I mean, we're just kind of joking off air that this is going to be more negative than last week, but it's hard not to be, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just been a bizarre week, and I'm probably not as scunnered as I have been during the seven times out of nine attempts to qualify that we've done this in recent years. But that's not for any particular reason other than just apathy. So we'll maybe get into it a bit more as we go on. But yeah, I just can't wait for the week to be over. Basically, I want to get the derby by, and I want the window to shut, and then we can just survey the wreckage, basically, and see where we're at.
Yeah, the carcass. See what's left of the carcass by the time the window shuts and after the derby. Yeah, you're right. And that leads us nicely into the opening question. So, Scott, I'll come to you first, actually. So, how deep-rooted do you think the current wave of negativity is amongst the Celtic support? And what are the main emotions, frustration, disillusionment, anger, that are driving these sort of the negativity?
It's interesting at the moment, trying to really get a feel for just how deep rooted that disillusionment is. I'm not really on forums or anything, but I do spend a lot of time on social media and just talking to mates. And it's easy to say it right now when we're still really in the midst of a hangover. We're only 48 hours removed from it, but to me it does feel bigger and more severe. The sort of backlash than I ever remember it being. Sadly, we've all got lots and lots of experience of this feeling in this exact circumstance. But this one does feel more severe, and it does feel to me as if more people who would normally keep their own counsel a little bit, and like, even those people are coming out and really strongly sort of criticising the board, and whether that will still be the case in a few weeks' time or a few months' time, then I suppose we'll have to wait and see. But and how much that manifests itself in just general discontent or actual, sustained protest, I'm not sure. I always think it's an interesting debate when we talk about, you see a lot of people on social media saying, just don't give these people any money, just don't buy tickets, just don't buy merchandise. But as we all know, it's not always that easy if your life revolves around the club and your kids are asking you to buy kits and stuff like that. And also just because football's meant to be escapism, and all this sort of all these kind of complicated emotions and sort of strife that you're normally coming to football to get away from all of that. So you get some people, I mean, we've probably been guilty of using the term happy clappers a few times recently. I think there are some people who just don't look at football that way, and and it's not necessarily a case of loving the board and approving of everything they do, but they just want to try and put a positive spin on it, because if you don't, then it's harder to just get up for games and go to the ground every week. So it is complicated, but I do think this is really on a level which we haven't seen before, and it's going to be interesting to see if that's maintained, because that's always been the case in the past. We're all raging for about 2 weeks, and then whether it's signings or a derby win or a decent result in the Europa League or whatever, like, it does flip, and sometimes it almost flips too quickly to the point where I'm a bit disappointed in it. I'm not saying I just want to be permanently unhappy, but it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves between now and, say, Christmas.
Yeah, I think you're right. And just before I bring Stu in, I think you mentioned there, Scott, about sometimes it flips too quickly and that kind of disappoints you. I know that we had the kind of sack the board chance and the chance against Lowell and Nicholson last Wednesday night, and then it was nowhere near the kind of same on Saturday. And I don't know if that was because we were maybe on the ascendancy a wee bit more on Saturday than we were, and Stu, is there a worry? Just a kind of side question before I go back to the opening question for you. But is there a worry that if we were to beat Rangers, which we all hope we do, and then there is a couple of signings that people like Scott say forget this sort of horrible feeling that's kind of inside us just now because of the charlatans that run the football club?
Yeah, you could argue that the reason that we've landed in this predicament is because we have just accepted it, whatever you say, 7 times out of however many, 9, the last time we've been in the qualification rounds. And, Celtic don't play at home if you take out the Legends match. And as I said, unless you plan on giving Mark Crossass both barrels, the next kind of proper forum that you'll have for a home game is, I don't think it's till the 26th or 27th of September.
I think potentially there could be a Europa League game. We'll maybe come on to that. As Scott says, there might be a protest that could maybe sort of facilitate that not happening. Yeah,
I think that you're right. It is possible that goes away and that good feeling returns to the club. But my feeling is that it's different this time, similar to when Scott's talking about how entrenched it is. I think because you had the narrative really bubbling up quite a bit about the lack of investment going into qualification and maybe a bit more discontent from the manager. So the narrative about the board was very established, and it was kind of becoming something that was in the mainstream news, how odd it was that Celtic wouldn't invest, and it's not a secret that we're cash rich now. And then on top of that, I think it's just the manner of the 2 games. It's not like you got beat by a Cluj or someone like that who actually they were quite tidy on the night or whatever. They scored some good. It was just like 2 of the worst games of football that you could ever imagine, and how listless the whole thing was. That it just feels like the culmination of so much bad planning and so many bad decisions kind of coming home to roost. And also when you're talking about things that can normally, take the taste away, it's, a couple of signings coming in or a big derby win. At the moment, on paper, that looks like one of the most dysfunctional Rangers teams we've seen in a long, long time, and that's off the back of a lot of dysfunctional Rangers teams, to the point where Celtic should be beating them and should be beating them comfortably, and we can talk about whether we think that will happen or not. And also, it's really evident in this, as predictable as it is, that we're scrambling. We're scrambling for players. There's no guarantee that we're going to get a player of any quality. There is certainly no guarantee, and not even an illusion, that the players we're bringing in will have been well scouted and been a big part of the plans. It's all just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. So even signing a couple of players, I don't think they're going to be sort of welcomed in with open arms, and that's all going to be good. You might have a couple of those players come in and hit the ground, and then that will make things palatable, and it might even make the team tick a bit better. And I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility, as Brendan Rodgers said, that Celtic could still go on and have a very good season. But right now, there's not a lot of sign of that on the pitch, and there's not a lot of sign of that off the pitch. And whilst you might be slightly better than the rest, that does seem like quite a turgid task for the next year. And ultimately, if you don't, I know we're going to go into it in a lot more detail, if we don't use this as a catalyst for change, you will be here next year and you will be here the year after that. Whether it's a different manager, whether it's a different team, doesn't matter on the individuals and the players that are letting you down. You will be here unless you use this as a chance to reform either the board or the club or the way we're run or the vision, how we do everything. So it's really important that as a fan base, kind of get a bit mobilised and organised and try and do things properly, because they love nothing more than a big international break to go and bury their heads in the sand. And if we're 9 points clear by then, they'll probably think that it's job done anyway. So this is the chance to sort of really speak up and make it clear that it's not good enough.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and I think you're both right to kind of highlight there's maybe people that you know, or maybe you're seen on social media or in forums or whatever, who traditionally would be board lackeys or who want to give their millionaire overlords a pat on the back for fuck all, really. But even they are starting to turn, and we just go, oh, Stuart, there you go.
I was just going to say, just speaking of unlikely sort of people on the side of the Celtic fans, I talk a lot about how I hate listening to the Guardian Football Weekly. Well, Ewan Murray was on, which is always a joy today. But he was actually saying that, he's first in line to call Celtic fans entitled. And I'm like, fucking, yeah, I know you are. I've heard it plenty of times. But he was saying he thinks that genuinely Celtic fans are in the right, and that it's insane the way that this football club is run. And it's when you get people like that who don't ever miss a beat, ever miss a moment to sort of call you entitled, etc., when they sort of see it quite clearly for what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even Anthony Joseph, who's took a bit of stick off fans recently for basically just putting out the line that the club wants him to put out, but even he did that kind of long thread, didn't he?
yeah,
I think it was a repost of a thread he did the last time this happened, but
yeah.
he was just talking from a perspective of a fan, and I found that quite interesting as well.
Yeah, yeah, and aye, there's loads. I think we commented on that last week that the questions from the journalists and the presser after the home leg were kind of asking the hard questions that probably it shouldn't be down to the manager to answer, but it was encouraging that they were saying like do the fans have like a sort of a right to voice their displeasure because of the amount of resources that we have that we just are choosing not to spend, it seems. But if we go to questions we've had from listeners, so Flinny has said, I can see this season turning into an absolute shambles. At one point, Kairat were building with a flat back four, Cal 10 yards in front of them in their own half, no pressure on the ball. They just sat in shape, and we were hoofing it long to James Forrest. New signings, underwhelming, and that's going by YouTube clips, which usually make people look better than they are, aren't going to sort that nonsense. Rodgers, has generally slowly coached away all the good things Ange had us doing for what? Cheer me up and tell me the new signings will actually make a difference. Scott, do you think that, say we were to bring in, I think the number was 4, wasn't it? I'm not sure it will be as many as that now, but say we were to bring in 2 or 3 sort of good, solid signings, do you think that's enough to really give this, not just the team a shot in the arm, but give the whole place a lift? Or is that asking too much?
I think it's asking too much, really. If they're all good enough to walk into the team, then that's another matter. And maybe, one of the things I found really striking about the other night was it was a lot of the worst performers were the supposed leaders of the team.
Yep.
It was the guys who are usually, first names on the team sheet. People are really loath to criticise them because they've been so solid for so many years. And like I thought Calmac really, really struggled. Dyson was all over the place. Carter Vickers, I thought he was the worst of the bunch. I know we didn't have any defending to do, but he looked so nervous, so poor on the ball. Schmeichel was flapping at everything. It seems weird to say this because he kind of won us the League Cup in the penalty shootout. I've never been so sure going into a penalty shootout with Celtic, our keeper wasn't going to save one. I just knew he wasn't going to. So I think even those guys who, as I say, you normally look at as the sort of leaders of the dressing room, when even those guys are struggling, I think we all just need that sense of a refresh and renewal, and maybe signings through the door would help psychologically as much as we would need their quality on the ball and whatever else, particularly in attacking areas. But yeah, it feels like it needs to be more than 2 or 3. But on the flip side, signing more than 2 or 3 in what?
4 days?
72 hours?
Yeah.
It's mental. It's fucking mental. And yeah, God knows what to expect from Balakisha. We don't seem to be getting linked with any strikers. And the left
No
back.
right wingers either, to be honest, because I thought that, we'll come on to it, but see the boy from the Tunisian international from Hammarby, he's played 90% of his career as a left winger.
Yeah, I don't think you're
so
looking at
I don't
that
understand
at all.
that. Yeah,
But I suppose it doesn't matter because we're bidding less than half of what he's worth again.
yeah, true.
That's
Yeah.
what we've been doing all summer. But yeah, I'll try and keep it short. But I really have my doubts about the left back signing as well. I mean, first and foremost, just our second dry loan of the summer just shows how poorly our recruitment has been ran. But I know he's played in Europe before, and that encourages some people. He's played for a lot of big clubs. Saraki is his name, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
But he doesn't seem to have been particularly successful at any of those big clubs. He just kicked about them, and I keep coming back to the fact that we're a club that can't seem to do any kind of conventional transfer business, even with clubs from England or Scotland at the moment. So why do we think we can just swagger over to Argentina and sign a Boca Juniors player and it'll all go swimmingly? It feels like we're trying to run before we can walk, really. And the rumour the other day seemed to suggest that they approached us. It was never a healthy situation when someone approaches you out of the blue to try and flog a player. So yeah, not I haven't been enthusiastic about it for weeks. The transfer, the idea that we would actually get quality in this window, but I've got little to no hope of it now.
Yeah, I think that's you kind of mentioned there about how it was reported that Boca approached us. Like, you wonder how that fucking happens. Like, sitting in Buenos Aires thinking, like, right, let's get Celtic on the phone.
Somebody bell Celtic.
That's it, yeah. Bell Celtic again, lad. Stu, just to kind of, again, talking about the business, and when Scott was talking there, saying, like, we probably need it to be 4 or 5. It's just got the hallmarks of the Tony Mowbray January window, doesn't it? Where I think that's maybe the busiest day we've ever been in transfers in our history. I think we maybe signed 4 or 5 players on the final day, and it rarely ever works. Like, I remember actually at Rangers when Cassini came in and he brought in about 9 or 10 players, and you just knew, like, even to get 50% of that hit rate, well, you'd have to be doing something to really get them to click and gel. And the fact that we've left it to the last 3 or 4 days of the window, when, as Scott says, we're getting offered players now. I think it was maybe someone had said in one of the forums maybe 2 weeks ago now that we would be relying on agent recommendations. You're going to need to be very, very lucky for these guys to A, be good, and B, gel together to sort of form some coherent system, or not even system, some coherence within Rodgers' team.
Yeah, on top of the obvious, with Champions League qualification, the problem in doing your business late in the window, you're not really giving the players a chance.
No.
And you want to give them as good a platform as possible to come in, do well, hit the ground running. I think if it even if it's starting to do my head in that, the Balakisha deal was all but confirmed yesterday, same with Srirachi, those players need to be up and training in the squad for Sunday. And the fact that Celtic still haven't announced them, and they have at least 2, if not 3 deals to try and pull out their arse from, and that's not even touching what do you do with outgoings, what do you do with you've got 3 third choice strikers. I know we'll talk about some of the news of players that are linked away. The idea would be that you bring in a striker and that one of those players was going to go out on loan. Is it got so bad that they actually can't go out, or that they are now just deemed good enough to stick around, even though that's never really been in the plan? I think it's just so much, just from a basic resources level, like, there's only so many deals that you can do at one time, and it feels like we're spinning plates and we're not very good at spinning one plate. So when you put 5 or 6, inevitably you're going to have some that sort of crash. And yeah, it's hard to get excited. I think that it doesn't really, even like fundamentals of time for them to know their teammates, get to know, build relationships and rapport. But see, from a fan's point of view, when the business is done like that, I think a lot of these players are all, if not written off, they're coming with a bit of baggage. Like Balakisha, there's a lot of people that think he's going to just be a flop. And sometimes it would take a player like him just a wee bit of time to settle anyway. But I kind of feel like the court of public opinion is already against him just because of the way that the business has been done. And that's inevitable unless you pull out some massive name or some really seasoned, highly lauded young player or something like that in the last couple of days of the window. Nothing looks like we're getting a good deal or getting a bargain or getting a sniff at someone, or that it's been worth waiting this length of time to do the deal. So it's just a bit of a mess. And if it is going to click, it's maybe more out of luck than it is certainly out of any sort of plan or any purpose.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's interesting, Scott, what Stuart says there about it's probably no fault, or it's definitely no fault of the potential players coming in, that they are coming into this sort of wave of negativity, and it's the board that's created this, and you can already envisage what the comments are going to be looking like on the social media posts when these players are signed. And I know they probably won't check social media, but it can't be nice for them to sort of come into that negativity. And I hope they don't do like, see how sometimes they'll do like a gimmick, like a graphic or a wee teaser or something before the
Yeah,
signings. I hope they can sort of take the temperature of the support and think, don't do that.
yeah. I was just about to say, I feel sorry for the players. I feel sorry for the Celtic media team because it's actually one of the few things we have been doing reasonably well over the last few years, as they do come up with some quite funny left field ideas for signing videos and announcements and stuff. And I think if you do any of that with any of these signings, unless they've got another one up their sleeve which hasn't been talked about so far and which genuinely will have a little bit of wow factor, then people just don't want to know. You have to go full sort of 1998 with it, and it's just like, we've signed him, he's from here, he plays in this position, you'll see him at the ground in about a fortnight's time. Like it just it needs to be really back to basics, I think. But right, sorry, a bit left field, but I was going to ask: is the Stengs one definitely off the table now? Because I've not heard his name for a couple of days, but I know he was getting linked to Pisa, wasn't he?
I think the chat was that if we'd qualified, Celtic were going to go and pursue a deal for him, but
Right.
he was like, they were trying to progress that quite quickly. But it is funny, like a lot of these players that have been there or thereabouts. I saw even Salvardi was all but signed by, was it Cremonese?
Cremonese, yeah.
Yeah, Cremonese. He was all but gone. So they're sort of, I think it's less likely that you're going to find that they go back and like the Romanian striker or Broim or these players that have been linked all summer, that they just go and get the deal done. And it's not, I was trying to think about how it was last year. I think in the January window before, Adamida emerged. Ooh, gosh, shudder just even think about it.
Hardly knew him.
With about two days, two and a half days
That's
to
right,
go in
yeah.
the window, he came out of absolutely nowhere, and I suspect that you would hope by today, tomorrow, whoever this striker is going to be, maybe it's the same deal. I personally feel like, providing he stays at the club, a lot of the business is now being done around the thought of Maeda being through the middle and trying to supplement the wings if they can. But that's just insane to think that you've had such a long time to get that right and they haven't been able to sign a striker.
Yeah.
Yeah, just thinking of just when you were talking there about going back to basics with announcing players. The only thing that I think would raise a smile for me is remember the show Summer Heights High with the teacher in that clip where he's like,
where the bloody hell have you been, bitch?
thank God you're here. Where have you been, bitch? Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I suppose we won't dwell too much on the game itself because there wasn't very much to talk about. But Stu, I think what Scott said earlier was spot on. Like your performers, or your sort of so-called big performers of the last 4 or 5 years, who you would turn to when you really need to sort of dig out other players or sort of play set examples, etc. They were the sort of biggest offenders. I thought Callum McGregor was awful. I think Scott's right to kind of point out CCV, who has had at least two mistakes in the last 2 or 3 games that he's played, which is really unlike him. Does that sort of, I think I mentioned on the reaction the other night that normally when one or two players are out of form, you think fair enough that can happen, but when the bulk or almost all of them are out of form, I suppose that maybe leads us on to the conversation about the manager, because maybe it's the instructions that were given or the lack of instructions, or Gal mentioned the other night about how Neil Lennon used to just try and get all your best technicians or best players on the park and hope that their quality would shine through. But for both 90 minutes and the extra time and penalties, I don't think anyone came out, any of the big sort of key players or star performers came out with any credit at all.
Yeah, I think just quickly on your points about the whole like the Lennon thing about getting all your best players in the park, that coupled with the comments that Rodgers made about how at the home leg, he's like, sometimes you can overcomplicate things. And I wonder if perhaps through some sort of stifling of options, he has been thinking in those ways of like, well, how will I actually manage a squad of players? Because you know that sort of middle to front, you don't really have the quality that you would expect. But regardless of all that, there's obviously enough in that team to go and beat a team like Kairat Almaty. It's well documented over the week. There's been a lot of comments on it. I think that the fact that it was our better players it does either speak to a sort of whole system failure where there's something bigger going on. I think it's quite a big example, and I've talked about it a couple of times about this. There's been some break in the mentality in this team, and I wonder if that's players that haven't moved on, and you've got a little bit of that feeling of like the 10 season. I don't think it's born out of resentment. I don't think there's people that have down tools and aren't trying, but you might just get this sort of like stale. There's no new leaders, there's no fresh faces. It's all the same things that I'm sure Callum McGregor's saying every other week that maybe just don't have quite the same impact as they once did.
Stu, can I just jump in a wee second on that? See, do you think, I know that McGregor had kind of after the game, or maybe it was yesterday, reiterated the sort of same message that him and the manager had been, but do you think the players, the bad feeling off the pitch, do you think the players are aware of that, or do you think it bleeds into their sort of psyche?
I think they're definitely aware of it, but I think that the best players in that team will also know where the gaping holes are and how frustrating that must be. And I think that to suggest that they don't is just naive. If you think of whatever your line of work is, whether you're a bin man, whether you're a professional footballer, you know that if you're on a day and someone that is not very good at their job is on, it makes your work harder, especially when you're being asked to like go and find a solution to a problem that they should have been able to solve in Almaty, but just like a stuffy, difficult tie, and you know that you can't really rely on Adam Ida, you can't really rely on Yang, you know, those sorts of things. You know that at 60 minutes, you might have to do more of a shift back the way because Liam Scales is going to play at left back because we don't have so it's like probably a combination of the negativity and just the practicality of playing with a squad of players that deep down they know aren't good enough. I think that I watched the game and I wasn't even like outwardly angry watching it. I almost like dissociated watching it because from about 5-10 minutes, it just looked the most inevitable thing. And I've never seen the players look, you know how when there's like a big upset and you saw it at the United game last night, that sort of shell-shocked look, like I can't believe we've been on the end of this historically bad result. There were Celtic players who had that look on their face from about the 10-15 minute mark where they were kind of like, oh my God, this is happening, isn't it weird? That's what the story's going to be. And it, like you said on the reaction, there's players that just could not complete 5-yard passes. And I think when the real basics go and people are scared to like complete passes, to move with the ball, it was like this collective freezing to the point where you have to think that it cannot be that bad all season, and it needs to be an isolated incident, but it's happened in those two games. Obviously, it was a lot better at the Livingston game, which was different personnel, but it's just like so bad that it's hard to put a finger on what went wrong. It's not like, oh, because we played X and Y position, we played badly. It was the most basic fundamental stuff, putting the ball out of touch, not being able to take throw-ins, just like really fundamentally basic stuff. So alarming that it's the kind of people that you would turn to in your leaders, and it looked a lot like the cup final where they just looked a bit shell-shocked. And I thought, you know, for the longest time, the main characteristic of that Celtic team is that they will always just find a way to dig it out. I can't really remember the last time we've dug it out. You know what I mean? Like when we've been up against it, nobody really takes the game by the scruff of the neck, when there used to be 5 or 6 players that would love the opportunity to be the one that sort of bails you out. And last year it was Maeda for a lot of the time, and now we just don't really seem to have that.
Yeah, and it is really worrying, Scott. And it's almost like she was saying there, straight away in the game, like it was as if the narrative was already written and we were powerless to change that narrative.
Yeah, totally agree with all Stu's points there. Like, I had the exact same sickly feeling in my stomach. It was just, it's the fact that, like, I think the team almost seemed shocked how much they wanted it. But it's like you're going to a team that's never even made it to the playoff round before. Just being in the playoff round is massive for them. And you can see it in their demeanour and their body language. You can see it in the way the crowd's reacting to everything, every throw-in, every 50-50 that they win. But that's the minimum you should be expecting when you go up against a team like that. But we seemed we were a bit like, whoa, don't know about this. And the two moments for me when I really started to, I mean, we talk about that sense of inevitability with this tie. I've kind of felt it to some small degree ever since they won that second leg against Slovan, because they had no right to beat Slovan really on paper. And it's just been ratcheting up throughout the first game, the build up to the second game, and then from a very early stage of the second game. But the 2 minutes that really just kind of pissed me off and just was where my own sense of hope started to filter away, was the one where Dyson collects it, and if he just turns to the right, he can slip Nygren in, but he kind of drifts out to the wing. And then there was the other one where Dyson gets it on the left side of the box, and all he needs to do is just deliver a low cross, and James Forrest has got a tap in. And both times, it's just like, I mean, we spoke a lot last season about the idea that Dyson was beginning to finally add those facets to his game, which had been missing beforehand. Beforehand, it was just like all pace, enthusiasm, like a dog chasing a ball, but the football brain wasn't always there. And last season, it felt like finally he'd added that. And at the moment, like Stu said a minute ago, he's a good example of the idea that these players haven't down tools, but they just look confused. They just look like they're not entirely sure what we're meant to be doing out there, and they're already sort of reading the negative headlines of a bad result. But yeah, I think there is a wider thing with Rodgers as well, especially the longer this second stint goes on, where we don't have a second wind in matches. If we start badly, generally speaking, we're just going to continue at that level or even get worse. And I know we rallied a little bit in extra time the other night, but I never felt confident that the winner was coming. And when the penalty shootout comes around, I know it almost seems pointless talking about it, because of course we shouldn't even be going to penalties against a team like that. But when it comes around, you'd like to think we prepared really well for it. And for a team like us, with the quality we've got, the amount of international players we've got in that squad, the amount of times we're competing in semi-finals and finals and European knockout matches, well, not so much, but like, we should be good at penalty shootouts, basically, is what I'm saying. And we've had two in a row that have been borderline disgraceful. Especially considering it's their backup keeper. To miss 3 out of 5 is unforgivable. To miss 2 out of 5 at Hampden and May is unforgivable. And I really don't know how, as I say, we didn't practice it more, but also how we didn't mix up the takers. Because I was just so sure. If you remember, the way Dyson hit his penalty the exact same way in the Scottish Cup final, right. We sort of leaned back. It's the weirdest body language. It's so half-arsed, and he looks like he's almost shutting his eyes and just hoping. And he pinged it down the middle, and Mitov nearly saved it, I think, but it sneaked in. And he'd done it again the other night. And it's like, of course we're going to fucking miss. So yeah, just so many parts of it that are just so frustrating.
Just quickly on the penalty, see if you think back to even the Aberdeen penalties, would that have been the Scottish Cup semi-final, League Cup semi-final? What was the one where Hart
the one that went on forever?
The one and Hart missed.
Yeah.
Think about how, with the exception of Hart, think about how good the calibre of penalties was then. Think about how good the calibre of penalties was in the League Cup.
Yeah.
Scottish Cup semi-final, yeah. And in the League Cup, they looked like they'd been drilled and rehearsed and very much practiced, because I remember thinking we're fucked here, there's no chance. And I was really surprised by how good the penalties were. Alistair Johnson was taking an amazing penalty, you know what I mean? Like players that you wouldn't necessarily think that.
Iwata, Bernardo, etc.
Yeah, all the penalties the other night, Adam Ida, I mean, it's a whole other thing. But basically just like, well, I'll just hit it with my stronger foot to like the easier side, because I just don't back myself at all. Do you know what I mean? And every time going to the keeper's stronger side, just no power, no direction, no nothing. The only 2 penalties that were hit with any real purpose or any real thought were Engels and McGregor, and even then McGregor's was quite fortunate. So yeah, that does reek of a lack of preparation, and perhaps should we practice penalties? No, we're not going to need that. That's not the mindset. We're going to go and get this done. And, that's obviously not been the case.
See, one thing that annoyed me, and I think I was quite critical of him on reaction, and I probably still feel the same way as I did, but see Nygren was desperate to take every set piece he could during the game before Engels came on. He wanted to take corners, he wanted to take free kicks, and he scored 2 at the weekend. Why is he not putting himself forward for a penalty? He wants to cup his ears, he wants to G up the crowd. Why not take some responsibility? That really annoyed me. That's just by the by.
No, I think that's fair. I think we talked about it, that there's a little bit of a leadership vacuum in that team when McGregor's not there, and it's not even the most damning thing about the transfer business we've done, but we've certainly not addressed that. Kieran Tierney will be there and offer you that to some degree for 60 minutes, but he's not going to be there to, step up and take ownership of situations like that. And neither's Negrin, and everyone else is lucky to be there. Like Shin Yamada's lucky to be at Celtic. That's not the sort of guy that, and I'm sure he would have taken a penalty if he'd been brought on. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's not, they're not there to be leaders because we've not signed players with that level of character.
Yeah, it's just another sort of damning indictment of the summer business. I suppose we'll go to a couple of questions here in a similar vein. So Robbie sent in for the weekly tonight. Do the panel think there's genuinely a realistic chance Rodgers either walks or is sacked if we get turned over on Sunday? And would you want it to happen? Barry had strong comments on the reaction, saying he should walk after Tuesday, and I probably agree, but for me it's probably a better the devil you know scenario, because who would he be replaced by? It'd likely be Kennedy till the end of the season, or ringing Angie's agent to see if that's a goer. It's embarrassing, but would the panel take that at this stage? We were talking just kind of before we came on air, Scott, about obviously the reaction is I'm a very reactive person, and it was literally as soon as Dyson had stroked that penalty so poorly, as you said. But it is difficult. I probably think now that the problems are above Rodgers, because he's been badly let down by the board. But do you think if it was to get worse, when we've kind of thought that it potentially could, do you think he would walk, or do you think there's any chance that he would be sacked, and where would we go from there if he was?
I can't imagine a scenario this season where he gets sacked. I just cannot imagine it, really. And in terms of him walking, I think the whole psychology of Rodgers coming back to the club, I think a huge part of it is, I know he got offered more money to come back, and he talked about his wife enjoys the lifestyle up here and whatever. I think I've always thought that it is just ego of just like, they all slated me before, I'm going to make them love me again kind of thing. And I think in his head, even if the team does really bad this season, I think he still thinks he's doing Celtic a big favour by being here to the end of the season. And he has reiterated it time and time again, hasn't he? Just that, like, 100%, I'll definitely be here to the end of the season. Sunday, I mean, we'll come on to talk about it, but I do think this Rangers team is so bad that, like, any form of loss, even if it's 1-0, even if even if there's a slightly fluky element to it, it will feel like losing about 7-0 to a good Rangers team. So who knows what could unfold in the aftermath of that. But yeah, as I say, I don't see any scenario where they sack him, and I'd be really surprised if he walks. I think he's quite adamant that he will be here to the end of the season. If I'd Nottingham Forest or West Ham or someone like that came along and asked him the question, would that flip things? I don't know. Even then, I'd be surprised, I suppose. But I'm at a stage where I fully understand and respect the opinion of people like yourselves the other night who are just want him gone. But I'm more on the side of the person asking the question. It's just better the devil you know for now, because I really don't want John Kennedy in charge again. We all remember his little stint during the season that should not be named. And also, just I do have a vain hope that, like, I know things always get progressively worse under like Rodgers' eras at different clubs. Third season's always bad, etc. But I also think he's quite a streaky manager, and I think if he suddenly, if depending on what happens with the new signings and stuff, I think if he does kind of regain the interest that he seems to have lost, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a really good stint between like September and December or something like that. So yeah, I don't think it will. I'd be surprised if it got to that point where it was really on the table for him to leave before the end of the season.
Yeah, Stu, what's your kind of thoughts on that?
I think that certainly on paper that is a result that sort of merits, and you can absolutely make a case for, but like changing your manager, and if we are to progress at this level, if that's what the football's going to be, and if you are going to start dropping points and losing games that you shouldn't be, then there's an argument to be made. But we sat through the most catastrophic situation of a manager blowing it, and the board did not act, and probably I don't think they would do anything differently. And I think that what's perhaps kind of galvanising for me is just that Brendan Rodgers probably will be here this season, but the worst thing that could happen for Celtic would be him signing a contract extension, and that is, even a couple of weeks ago I would have said probably the opposite, that I thought that potentially with the notion of Rangers getting their act together, you wanted someone that could kind of guarantee success and guarantee continuity, but the wow factor around Rodgers is long since gone, and it's looking very stale, and I think that getting somebody in with fresh ideas and a fresh approach could really, really benefit a club like Celtic and the squad of players that we have. And when I say that, I would kind of include everyone. I would include John Kennedy in that as well, and Gavin Strachan, and that it's probably about time that Celtic got some fresh ideas. But I think that the instability it would cause just now would not be worth it, and it is better to the devil you know. And I think what we cannot lose sight of is that it's the people that are largely responsible for this situation that would be picking his replacement, and that would be the first domino in the same sort of trail that tends to happen time and time again. And I think if you can't use this as an opportunity to try and unseat some of them, unseat some of those ideas, change some of those ideas, change the way that we operate as a club, then you are just going to end up with either someone else that's quite malleable to what they want to do, or just end up in the same position. And I just wouldn't trust them at all to find an adequate replacement just now, or even if Rodgers announces he's going to have a full year to do it, I wouldn't trust them to do that in a seamless fashion, in the same way that they knew for a full summer. Like, if you just think about the Eddie Howe debacle and how lucky Celtic were to get Postecoglou in the end, and that worked out, because that was a fucking shambles as well, and they just happened to luck out that not many people knew about Ange Postecoglou, and that was just kind of how it went. So I don't think we would be as lucky again, and I think unless we can use it as an opportunity to change them, then we're just doomed to repeat the past.
Yeah. Michael has kind of sent in a similar question. He was just saying if I still feel the same as I did after the reaction. And he goes on to say that it would cause unnecessary disruption. If we can at least get some decent quality players in with what remains of the window, I think he has a team functioning to a level that will win the league, which is now the bare minimum. Also, the mind boggles as to who the board would replace him with, but I suppose it won't be long until we're in the midst of that fiasco. I also can't for the life of me figure out why the club is so reluctant to modernise. Like a good few pints on a Sunday to cure a hangover, I watched on last night to see Bruges demolish Rangers, and the thought of us having a good head-to-head with them less than a year ago. They've kicked on, and we have done the opposite. The blueprint is there from similar-sized clubs, but our board and majority shareholders seem hell-bent on his self-fulfilling prophecy of a rainy day fund. Maybe that's one for the biscuit tin. Apologies for the rant. Love the board. Love the pod. Sorry. Sorry, Michael.
You hear me? Is Michael Nicholson?
Done him dirty there because he called me out. Apologies for the rant. Love the pod and fuck the board. So exact opposite of what I read there. Scott, it's funny we were talking about obviously the draw had come through earlier, and weirdly Peter Lowell was there probably in his capacity of that committee he's on, but that just really annoyed me as well. But you were saying that glad that we never get drawn against Bruges again, because we would have that sort of debate about why can't we be like them.
Yeah, and I suppose we do spend a lot of time doing this as Celtic fans. We're always sort of enviously looking over other clubs' fences at how perfect their gardens are and stuff. And like, we've done it a lot with Bodo Glimt and with Salzburg and various other clubs of around about our size and our revenue.
It used to be serious as well, so it used to be like even clubs who are way beyond us. It used to be like Benfica, didn't it? They were the sort of blueprint, but they
we used to say like Benfica and Ajax and stuff, and I suppose like we haven't been on those clubs' levels for a very long time. But yeah, the Club Brugge one I think is inevitable, partly because we've all seen them up close over the last week against Rangers, partly because we saw them against Parkhead in the Champions League just under a year ago. So we've seen the whole evolution of that team. If you watch Premier League regularly, you'll know that most of their best players from around about the time of the 1-1 draw with us last year have now gone there. The winger is Talby, is his name, I think. Went to Sunderland. The fullback has went to Brighton. They had they had an Argentinian striker as well that's left. Um, and the transition from one era into another, as we saw last night, has just been absolutely seamless. And if anything, they look better.
Yeah,
And it's not even they're not even spending mad amounts. It's sort of obviously much more efficient and professional, but it's sort of along the lines what they've done this summer is sort of along the lines of what we did last summer. They've made about 40, 50 million coming in, and they've spent about 30, and the rest is just youth products. I think the stat the commentator mentioned last night was that the back four were all youth products, and three of them are 20 years old. It's just wild. like, uh, so much because sometimes, as I say, we make these analogies, we make these comparisons with some other clubs in Europe, and it's not always completely accurate or fair. But with a club like that, we saw we don't have a particularly big stadium. I don't imagine there's huge amounts of revenue or TV money in the Belgian league. Where are they getting the money from? It's from selling players and doing it really well. But also they've appointed a really good young manager, and they've got an excellent academy system. So yeah, they are they are the new sort of objects of our jealousy, and might be for some time now, because I fully expect them to go into the Champions League and do really well now. And sort of on the flip side of what I'm expecting with Kairat, because I think the sort of slow burn embarrassment of the other night is going to continue for a while, because I think Kairat are going to get scudded 6-0 every fortnight all winter.
yeah, definitely. Just I saw this on one of the forums. I think it's maybe before the game last night, and stuff like this normally gives me the ick, but it just kind of gives you an idea of what Club Brugge are trying to achieve. So their mission is they aim to be Europe's most innovative, efficient, and sustainable football company by creating value for its fans, partners, team, and society. Driven by our no sweat, no glory attitude, strengthened by our togetherness, and backed by our code of ethics, we want to win every day. And then our vision is winning more and more people's hearts every day by being the hardest and smartest working club in Europe. Now that
Fucking
That's so
grow up, Club
LinkedIn.
Brugge.
that
Fucking
is
grow up.
it is as I say, it's kind of broken Jason Stew, but it's a million miles from at least they're actually given they probably ran it through AI reading that, but
Barry,
we could never.
I didn't hear the phrase added value or world class basics once, so I don't believe it. I can't believe that that's the way. Yeah, I mean it's joined up thinking, isn't it? That's whatever the jargon is and however it's written, it's just joined up thinking, and it's a vision and a plan. At the very least, it's a plan, and you are watching them get better, and also like so we ran into them last year, but I'm pretty sure that they're when it was the traditional group stage. They'd qualified, they like finished fourth, then third, then second, and then do you know what I mean? Like they have over
Building, yeah.
years established themselves as a Champions League club, and whatever his current shortcomings, I do believe that that's what Rodgers wants for Celtic, and that's what was that when he talks about
You
being
would love
here's
that no
Beth.
sweat, no glory stuff. He could have written
Oh,
that
he would
himself, couldn't he?
absolutely love that. He probably did. He's probably that's. But that is what I think. That's what he's talking about. That's achievable. And you don't have to go and spend 20, 30, 40 million pounds on a player, or you don't have to completely break the wage structure to bring in quality players.
So,
You just
yeah,
have to be
sorry.
better at it and more efficient
Just
at it.
just quickly, the guy who scored the opening goal last night with diving header, and then I think he sets up the last goal with a cool little back heel. He's about 21. I think he's like Italian born but German nationality striker. They got him from Hanover in the second Bundesliga for I think it's about 6 or 7 million. So you're not telling me that's the kind of signing we couldn't make if we weren't like if we were a properly functioning football club.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, I think there's kind of been it's kind of been well published that or publicised that their signs they've made, as I think you both alluded to, and they're not paying huge amounts. They're just clever with their recruitment, and they go and probably offer what teams are looking for. What a concept, rather than lowballing that we've done all summer.
The interesting
Um,
thing is, though, I don't think they won the league last year. I think Union Saint-Gilloise won it, so it is just like there's maybe it's just a LinkedIn ideology, but there's a lot of hipster clubs doing some unbelievable business over there.
yeah, definitely. Um, I suppose we'll move on to some news then. We've sort of covered Balikwisha, apparently he's passed his medical. I think there was a few in the know, if that's even a thing, ITK anymore. We're saying that he would be announced today, but it's not looking likely at 20 to 8 at the time of recording. I suppose the kind of surprising thing, and I think it's maybe caught, judging by reports, Scott, it's caught the club and the player by surprise, is that Swansea are kind of all in and trying to sort of take Adamida off her hands. And there was a sort of a journalist today saying that Celtic would be looking to try and recoup as much as they could. I don't imagine they will, but is that a surprise for you? And here's a question for you. I think I was saying this earlier. See if the option was to sell Ida but not replace him, would you take that? I think I probably would. I'm just done with him.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I think the gal say something about selling a fridge last week or something. Imagine you just had like a clearly broken, knackered fridge just sitting in your back garden being rained on, and someone comes round one day and says, "Here, do you want £3,000 for that?" So I'm like, I can't believe it. We've convinced ourselves this summer that we are the worst club at transfers in the world, but it might just be Swansea. Need to be careful what I'm saying actually on the public podcast. Really don't want to do anything that could put them off this idea of actually bidding a decent amount for him. And that's the thing as well. I think that's the phrase it was Anthony Joseph used earlier on today. A decent, they're willing to bid a decent amount, and I suppose that's where it becomes interesting. Like me and my mates were talking about it in the group chat earlier on. What qualifies as a decent fee. Bearing in mind we paid what is it 9 with add-ons, so it could become 10 or 11.
I don't think it was as much as that. I think it's a very minor point that always annoys me about Admira, that I think it was like 8-ish or 8.5, but people always say it's like upwards.
Right.
Might be wrong on that.
Yeah,
seems just 8.5 with potential 9.5. I think it went to, because some people say he cost more than Edward, but I don't believe he did.
Yeah, there's no fucking chance he's hit whatever the things were either. It was to do with like goals or attitude. Smiles.
Genuinely, it might have been. It might have been something about Champions League qualification.
Oh fuck! True.
So it's not hit that one, but I'd happily take 5 for him. Genuinely,
I'd probably take 3 to be honest. But yeah, that's by the way.
It's almost at a stage, and it feels harsh saying it because he's not a toxic influence. Like he is trying, but
is he? Is he?
I liked Rogers' quotes a couple of weeks ago where he was like, he's a big honest boy or something like that. A fucking Labrador that he's the second most expensive signing in our history. I do think he's trying, but I also think he's feeling very sorry for himself. So yeah, maybe those two things can't be true at the same time. But I'm almost at the stage where, as I say, he's not a toxic influence, but us being without him the club will be a better place than having him, even though that leaves us very short in the striking department. I think my ideal scenario would be to sell him, even if that is for half or less than half of what we paid, and then you go and you put that money towards Montiano or something like that. I think we do need a striker with his characteristics, but just with some faint vestige of ability. And at the moment, it's just sad watching him at the moment. I really, he's just sinking further and further into himself, and it's not benefiting anyone, least of all him, as a player who wants to go and play for Ireland and maybe feature in international tournaments or whatever. I think the Championship's his level, so I think it would suit all parties. So yeah, it's maybe too good to be true considering the summer we've had, but I really hope it does happen.
Sure, just when I kind of bring this over to you as well, we'll kind of lump in Yang as well. I thought Yang was put in another disaster class on Tuesday night, and also linked with a move to the Championship with Birmingham. I was kind of saying to my pals earlier, I remember we used to play Champman, and sometimes you got like bored and you would just sell everyone, and it got to the stage where you just had those greyed out players that you couldn't do anything with. That's what I think we're going to have for the next 6 months of the season.
That's what it feels like he is. Honestly, it's if you can get. I was trying to think about it because you are literally just down to talking about bodies now. It's not even necessarily quality. So say they sign another winger. You've got Balakisha, Maeda. You've got this new winger that I've just said we've signed in Forest. If you have to run with that until January and February, and then you get a version of Jota back, is that worth doing? It depends. If you can, I honestly think that it's such a negative thing for the fan base, the either story just lingering about, and it's a real gift. If someone was to come and offer you £5 or £6 million, and you can recoup and then add that money to whatever it is that you're lowballing to get a proper striker of pedigree to be in, and then if it has to be this new striker plus Shin plus Johnny Kenny, and if Johnny Kenny does stay and becomes your third choice striker, Johnny Kenny, I really don't rate him, but he does give you like bags of endeavour and energy. Even his pressing is much, much better than Adam Ida. So in the aggregate, it's probably going to benefit the team more. And then you never know, he might hit form and he might settle in at the level. I also think the fact that we're not in the Champions League, the Europa League draw might end up being quite modest, that you would hope that if this squad could function a bit better, they could be competitive at least to getting you through that group stage where you could go again in January if you want to try and tool or tweak the sort of front area of your pitch. But I personally cannot watch Yang and I cannot watch Adam Ida play for Celtic again. It is unbearable. And if you have that option, I think that they should do that. It's just whether or not they can facilitate so many deals. And I worry that coming along, they might look at that and go, right, let's spend a bit of time with this and not actually finishing the deals that they need to conclude. And I wonder how much resistance there is from the player, because it would be difficult, an Irish player who it means a lot to him to be a Celtic player, to kind of go out under a cloud like this. I'm sure he personally wouldn't want that, but it's just whether or not he has a choice.
Yeah, that's true. And not one to sort of promote rumours, but I was just kind of reading there that apparently Ida said his goodbyes at Lennoxtown today, so we'll see if that is the case. And
That's so exciting.
I,
Sorry, that's really exciting.
I feel sorry for the boy.
And I wish him well.
Yeah,
I do wish him
we're
well.
both saying it was like his dream move. He's probably lived the dream. He scored a winner in a cup final, scored in the Champions League, scored at Ibrox twice. But I think it's best for him and the club that he moves on. The other
You
thing,
can't see me because my camera's died, but I'm doing the Trump. Wow, I didn't know, right? You're telling me for the first time. No, I just absolutely blown away by
hopefully
that.
that's true, but we'll see. The other one, Scott, was that the talk is that Inamura's going to be made available for loan. I thought he was decent on Saturday. I think some people, I agree with, I think it was Gal that was saying on the reaction to the game, I think some people maybe went overboard with how good he was. Maybe it was just because the alternative was Scales when Tierney's not playing. But where would you think a good loan for Inamura would be? That is on the sort of premise that he does have a future at Celtic.
Um, I suppose. I suppose what like so Roger, what was it? Sorry, what was Roger's quote about him the other day where he's saying I can't? He was saying he couldn't trust him in the Champions League, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So would a loan to a bottom six Scottish Premiership side or something, would that really remedy it? I suppose you would be saying, okay, he's going to be up against a kind of physical challenge every week, and maybe that will give him some of the things that Roger seems to think he's lacking. To me, like it is something we need to be doing a bit more often, is loaning to other clubs in the league, even though the Quan loan deals didn't exactly work out for us. But at the same time, I think such a sort of cultured defender. He does really like to be on the ball. That I think you could look abroad, maybe depending who was in for him. It's just such a strange one, We've signed him for 250 grand, which is mental in this day and age. We've signed him from the team sitting bottom of the Japanese league, conceding a mental amount of goals, and despite all of that, he's came in and actually looked quite good so far. Like I really liked him. I always he really zips his passes, doesn't he? Like sometimes he almost hits him too hard sometimes. But I really like the cross he put in for Negrin as well, which would have been a goal if he'd just done a diving header, but he tried to take it down. So it's like we're talking about Yang and Ida and I think we all just want rid of him. But at the same time, it's like we almost need to face the fact these are first team players at the moment. That's how much the squad has been allowed to degrade. So, when in Amura, in an ideal world, yeah, of course we should be loaning him out. But if it was up to me, I would be tempted to hold on to him. But it's the usual kind of story that we've had with a lot of players over the last few years. If the manager doesn't fancy him, he's just not going to give him any chance to build up any kind of momentum. So you might as well put him out on loan somewhere and see how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a strange one, Stu. How do you think he kind of did at the weekend? And same question to you. Where do you think he would be best suited to go out on loan? If you think that's what should happen.
I do think that there is a little bit of he looks great because you know what the alternative is at the moment, and I have been surprised by him even in pre-season. I thought he offered a lot more than perhaps what we thought. I think the concern with him going out on loan would be, is he going to get played as a left back, because he hasn't really ever been a left back by trade. It's something that we very much sort of shoehorned in. He was signed as a left-sided centre half, and I think politically, or I think Rodgers was spot on to be like, yeah, that's not my left back. Go and sign an actual left back, please. I think a loan would be good, particularly with the view that the manager probably won't be here next season, that he could go out and try and make an impact and then have a fresh perspective, fresh conversation with whoever comes in and maybe establish himself a bit more. I think crucially he has to be playing because he hasn't got a lot of football, professional football behind him, just because of the way that the Japanese system works. He'd only had one season, I think, out of his university. Maybe somewhere in Scotland, and maybe like a Motherwell. Like Motherwell have at least been playing quite progressive football and look quite interesting as a proposition this season. So you're not just going to, whilst I know that Rodgers wants that physicality, that backs to the wall defending that he doesn't really have in his locker just now. You also don't want to sort of knock the football out of him. I think that with the comparison to like a Kwon deal, it probably did benefit Kwon going to St Mirren and going to Hibs. But really that just quite quickly became about getting the money back because it was really evident that he wasn't at the level. But for the outlet that we've had, it should be a developmental loan. It should be something to see if we can make something of this player, not can we flip him, because it's not really worth your while. You're not going to make so much money off him that it's going to justify that sort of approach. So somewhere in Scotland, maybe Motherwell. That's as good as I could offer you.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. We're kind of just conscious of time, so sadly, as we know, the Europa League draw will be tomorrow at 12 noon, so we'll see who we get in that. And we'll kind of finish off by turning attention to the derby on Sunday that we've kind of touched upon. Scott, team selection, there's still, as we say, there's not long left in the window, but it seems like we are kind of down to like a skeleton squad. Potentially, if say Ida and Yang were to go, you'd imagine that the potential buyers wouldn't really want them to play in that game. And as we know, Celtic tend to bend over backwards for players going out rather than trying to get them in. But
Yeah.
I think this might be one of the hardest team selections to make, or maybe it's easy because there's so few bodies.
Yeah, I think it will be relatively easy in the end. I mentioned some of the names I mentioned earlier. Like in an ideal world, I'd be dropping them. I wouldn't necessarily drop Calmac because I think we've seen how badly we do miss that kind of metronomic side of his game when he has missed this fixture in the recent past. But I would certainly be dropping Dyson. And we just don't have the option to do that. Whether he's on the wing or up front, we are going to need him in some capacity from the start. If we'd seen any of JSP, I would be tempted to throw him in for CCV. I know with CCV, it's usually just a case of him looking a bit ungainly. He rarely makes a mistake leading to a goal, but on the evidence of the other night, it might be coming, and it might be in a big game like this. So yeah, it's a tough one because it so badly needs a freshen up, but I don't know where that comes from at the moment. Like, I think you have to play Negrin because he's been patchy, but he's at least been some form of catalyst for us. And Engels was horrific when he came off the bench the other night. Like those set pieces, fucking hell. And I think they have to play Hatate as well, just because he has made an influence in this fixture, and we're probably going to need him just in terms of progressing the ball upfield. That's what makes this A, such a unappealing, uninteresting game, but B, such a difficult game to predict. Like, we normally know what we're getting at Ibrox. Different players, different managers. Sometimes they're better, sometimes they're worse, but you know you're getting sort of physicality and aggression and pressing and all that. I really don't know what we're going to get for this Russell Martin team on Sunday. I have no idea. I think their best chance of success would be just trying to mimic what we did last year, like under Ferguson and under Clement in the January derby, and just being a bit more pragmatic, letting us have the ball, and just seeing if we can score from counter attacks and set pieces. Waiting on us just losing the game for ourselves, which we're perfectly capable of doing at the moment. I don't know if Russell Martin is capable or even willing of doing that, which is why, I'm the kind of person that can usually finds it quite easy to make a case for us to lose a derby, because I always do feel pessimistic building up to it. But I am one of the people you talk to who I think we will win on Sunday. I think they're just so rancid at the moment, but I don't necessarily think we'll do it in impressive fashion.
Yeah, it is kind of all over the place. Sometimes I think we'll probably lose because I've lost all trust in this Celtic team, Stu. But watching them last night and from what I've seen of them this season, they do look so open, and you just think that if we did have even two or three of the players that we've had in the past 5 or 6 years, or probably any time in the last 25 years as forwards compared to what we have now, we would have a field day. But I've got on the rundown here. Could it be an all-timer of shite? This fixture, because it's. I think I heard someone say two bald men fighting over a comb. Um, but how do you see it, and how do you kind of what do we have to do to win, essentially?
I think if Celtic, and they have done, if you look back at like maybe the Falkirk game would be the best example of it we've had so far this season. Maybe the Aberdeen game as well. Just the ability to control a game with tempo as well and just like ping the ball around. But at the moment, it looks like we don't really have that, and everything's like 3, 4, 5 touches. It's not 1 and 2 touches. And I think that there is a concern that sometimes when the Rangers teams of old would come up against a more expansive team like Celtic, that's when they thrive, because there's opportunities for counter attacks that they don't get in against, Dundee, Motherwell, St Mirren. I worry that would still probably play into their hands the way that they're set up, and I do think they've offered such little going forward, but they do have 1 or 2 players that could cause you problems. My main worry is that the chances that they're coughing up to other teams that we just won't capitalise on. Like, I think if we scored early, I think they'll fold. I think they have no mentality, and I think the other thing that might go for us is that pretty much 1 to 11, you've got players that don't clearly grasp or understand what I would say the club or Scottish football are about. And I also wonder if you would have players who have more experience in that fixture, perhaps breaking ranks slightly, and whatever the game plan is that they're being given, that they're already currently struggling to follow, whether or not they would try and sort of go into business for themselves, thinking more like a Raskin or a Tavernier or something like that. Well, there's a lot of chat that Raskin's going as well, so who knows? It's
Did you
just
see that
very
his dad called out Russell Martin today?
No?
Yeah, just said like it's a disgrace and all that, and the man claims no respect, kind of thing. So that's always
Interesting.
fun.
Well, yeah, I think if we could just be clinical, if you could just take your chances, then I think there's every opportunity to just roll over them, and I think it'll get extremely toxic extremely quickly. But I just have no faith in the Celtic team at the moment, with the mentality issues that I'm talking about. Just that they will conspire to somehow, be the first team to get beat by them. And it's the sort of thing where I don't think it's in Celtic's best interest for Russell Martin to lose his job anytime soon, just the way that things are. But also, I wouldn't really want it to tighten up to 6 points just now and then have them potentially bring in someone that could put together a run of results while we sort of find our way into a tailspin. I think what you really want is just a reaction from the other night. I think if Celtic play well, they'll win. And I think it's performance more than anything. And it's been a wee while since I've felt like that going against Rangers, where I just want to see a performance first and foremost. But the last couple just haven't been good enough. And I think that's been a big problem for Rodgers to solve. And who knows if we'll be able to do it. I would also, just quickly on lineup, I would be throwing new players straight in, just something to freshen it up. If Balakisha's there and trains, play him. Just get him in.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because we need to try something different. It could be like a sort of wild card that he just hits the ground running. And then I've said this before on pods, Scott. I remember that Angie's justification, purely because, again, similar to now, we were down to the bare bones, like I said, a skeleton squad. But Ange used to say that he would throw players in straight away because that would fast track them to what it's like to be a Celtic player. And you're not going to face anywhere more hostile in your career than you would be as a Celtic player going to Ibrox. So I would agree with Stu. Would you do the same if we get 2 or 3 players in tomorrow now? I don't imagine we'll do any business at the weekend. That seems absurd if you're Michael Nicholson. But would you put them straight into the start lineup, or at least on the bench anyway?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually, as you say, we've done it a few times over the years, and it always feels risky, but it's hard to think of many times where it actually has backfired.
Juranovic, quite a bad one.
Oh yeah, was that the one now?
He was just rotten. He was just like really bad.
Was that not though? Was that not when we threw in?
Was that not his?
We threw in. I thought we threw in
one.
Johnson. Remember, and because we played Johnson, we switched Juranovic to left back, and he had like an absolute shocker.
I
Remember?
don't know if that was. Well, maybe it's the same game. Maybe I'm thinking of.
I think that was his last one before he left.
I think that's right, because Johnson was there. Yeah, just before.
Just before he left. Okay, I'm wild. Stand down.
Yeah.
But the one I think you said, Barry, in the chat earlier on. What's an example you can remember of going to Ibrox feeling really negative, and actually you get a pleasant surprise in terms of a result and performance? And the main one I thought of was the 2-0 at the start of season 2019-20, where we were not too far removed from getting put out of Europe put out of Champions League qualifiers by Cluj.
Oh yeah.
And we had to throw a load of new signings in, and people already thought the signings were dross. So the back four contained, I think, Hatem, Bolly, and Julian.
That's right. Yep.
And we went and we did that famous thing. We pinged it into the corner from kick-off, and then
Love it.
I think Mikey Johnson started as well at the time.
Yeah, he set up Edward for the first goal, didn't we? A nice through ball.
Yeah, so there is precedent definitely for throwing people in and them rising to the challenge. So I absolutely would like to see it, because some of these guys in the first team at the moment are just begging to get dropped, and the only way you're going to coax better form out of them is to give them a genuine sense of jeopardy about losing their place in the team.
Yeah, and I think as well, like, say it is Parkwisha that comes in, and if he is really direct and he doesn't really have any sort of, he hasn't been coached to the horseshoe of death just yet, it might, it'll give them something to think about, because they maybe weren't expecting it, but it also might just sort of kickstart the players to think, right, this guy's going to be effective for us. And Stu, you mentioned like you kind of feel sorry for the new signings, but if they were to come in, play well at Ibrox, and contribute to a victory, then things can change on the park, certainly, for the positive, and I think we need that.
Of course. I mean, it's exciting. I think I saw someone making a comment about Dane Murray and Colby Donovan, about how they were playing without the baggage of playing for Celtic at the moment, or the baggage of last season's cup final, or any of these sorts of things. And I think just coming in and fresh ideas and wanting to make an impact is really valuable. And maybe a little bit of ignorance to what the fixture is not a bad thing, that you're not overawed by it. Well, hopefully. So yeah, I think that there's a lot going for us in that regard, but it's just whether or not they'll physically get them in and playing in enough time. I suspect the reality is he'll probably come off the bench or something like that, but yeah, that would probably mean starting Maeda out left, and presuming that, I mean, even if he signs a new contract, I wouldn't start him at Ibrox. You're probably starting Shin or Johnny Kenny, which is pretty terrifying. But you want to be able to exploit someone fast. They play with such an insane high line so many gaps. Someone like Maeda, someone like Shin should hopefully have a field day there, but it's very hard to call.
It is. I think we'll just kind of leave it there. Kind of covered a lot tonight, and I think that, as we've said, like there is a lot of sort of negativity and bad feeling around the club, and it's been caused by the board. And I think no matter what happens, even if we were to bring in three or four signings of good quality, we were to win convincingly on Sunday, we can't lose sight of what Dermot Desmond, Peter Lawwell, Michael Nicholson, Chris Mackay, the list is endless of their sheer incompetence. I don't even know. I kind of called it managed decline, but it doesn't seem like there is any sort of kind of thought that they are thinking what they're doing. It's just a case of filling their pockets. So I would kind of urge people to still kind of keep that eye out at the board no matter what happens over the next few days. But Stu, I think you'd said in one of the chats, no matter what, we wouldn't have chosen it for it to be this way, but you can imagine that it probably will be somewhat of an exciting end to the window because you would hope, and then again, there's no guarantees with those sort of clowns in the boardroom, that we will be relatively busy over the
Well,
next few days.
just to provide a little bit more context, I was saying that for all that it's an absolute shambles, it is a bit exciting when you're like, oh, this player that we've never heard of is now signed for Celtic, and that doesn't mean that they're good. And I think that that's the that's the problem with the argument. But yeah, it's going to be a busy few days if nothing else. Between you would hope getting these two players unveiled and then three mystery box players to come in, and who knows what we'll end up with, who goes out. We've yet to have that big £20 million bid for a player to come in as well. So, but
Rising.
whoever it is, they can take them.
Yes, that's true. But yeah, Scott, kind of final thoughts before we finish up?
Yeah, but this is always a stupid thing about when we parachute out of the Champions League into the Europa League. When you've let the team decline to that degree, to continue to function in any kind of meaningful way and to get people through the turnstiles on a Saturday, you're still going to have to spend money. It might not be, the same amount of money you would have spent beforehand, but you're still going to have to spend a lot of money to rebuild that team and to placate the manager. So this is just what's so baffling about the way the club just keeps making the same mistake over and over and over. It's sold as a thing they're doing out of a sense of responsibility and financial pragmatism, but it costs the club more money in the long term. Like that, the club is absolutely going to be hitting the wallet now over the next few months because those Sunday daytime league games are going to be nowhere near sold out. Europa League group stage fixtures are going to be nowhere near sold out, and yeah, it's a completely self-defeating strategy. I remember, not to get too deep into it, but when we were growing up, there was always a talk of the biscuit tin, and there was the people who would defend the biscuit tin. But we're at a stage now where it's actually vandalising the club. It's just making it harder and harder to function effectively in a world where we're trying to go up against, like club teams like Club Brugge we mentioned earlier on. Um, but yeah, just to finish on a really negative thought, we were talking about us getting signings in that could start. I'm quite paranoid about the idea of they get Miovski in and he starts because he's 100% scoring against us if he does.
Well, I was just going to raise that point when you talked about throwing players in. I would be absolutely certain that he starts, and that's a player that they've signed on the Thursday before the Sunday, and I presume he's fit. I presume he's been at least training at Girona, and I would not be surprised at all. They've done it a couple of times this season. They did that with a left back against Bruges in the first leg, and that's just the way that they're operating. And yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, you don't exactly need to acclimatise them, do you? And that's probably the main. Well, we're missing many things at the minute, but we don't have a striker really, and he would just come in and solve that problem immediately. So that is probably one of the main things I'm a bit paranoid about.
Yeah. Yeah, time will tell, and it's interesting. You almost do want to just kind of be Monday 11 o'clock now because then you'll know what's
Yeah.
happened on Sunday. You'll know what the squad looks like for from now until January. So kind of wishing the next few days away, but hoping that there will be some positivity because God knows we need it. But this has been the Cynic Weekly. Stu, thank you very much.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks for having me.
Scott, thank you.
Thanks. Not 100% sure if we managed to make it more depressing than last week, but we'll try again next time.
Yes, the only way is up. This has been the Cynic Weekly. I've been your host, Barry Gallagher, with Scott Fleming, Stuart Duggan. Sack the board, and we'll speak to you down the road.